You are now listening to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Wait, the answer was add 10 gallons?
Add 10 gallons.
My first thought was we got to put Acti-Gel in it.
Yeah, great.
Truck's on the way.
On the way.
Yeah, okay. I've got two observations, neither of which are really educated or well thought out. Which are like most of my observations are.
There aren't a lot of problems on a job site that can't be solved with a sack full of biscuits.
Today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast is brought to you by Acti-Gel 208. Acti-Gel 208 is a high-performance additive for the concrete industry that is greatly beneficial to the producer. It enables them to increase the percentage of manufactured sand by up to 100% and completely replace all the natural sand in the mix. In areas where natural sand is scarce, inconsistent, and expensive, this provides a huge benefit to any ready-mix company out there. Benefits of manufactured sand and concrete include consistent air content, improved compaction, and increased density. Now in the past, the downside of using manufactured sands was that they were hard to pump, hard to place, and hard to finish. Well, Acti-Gel 208 solves all those issues. By improving suspension, stability, and the quality of the cement paste in the mix, Acti-Gel overcomes the old issues with manufactured sand and leaves them behind. Let Acti-Gel 208 improve the quality of your mix while saving money on every yard you produce. For more information, visit us at actigel.com. That's ACTI-GEL.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We appreciate you being with us. As always, I'm Josh, joined by Joey and Paul. What's up, fellas?
What's up, brother?
Nothing. Joey, you good?
Yeah, man, everything good.
Good. Yeah, well, in this episode, we have friend of the program, Matt Wilbanks. He's back. Enjoy having him on the program. Despite being a Tennessee Vols fan, everything else that he says is pretty knowledgeable and pretty on point. So we talked with him on this episode about the cement shortage in certain areas of the country. You guys might be feeling the pinch more than others, but he has some good insight on the industry, what's been happening, what we can expect from that industry, and the direction that they're going as a whole to combat carbon emissions and all that fun stuff that we enjoyed talking about in our carbon-specific episode that you can go back and listen to. But for now, we're going to get to some things in the industry that are interesting to us here in our current event section. You know, speaking of new initiatives and new directions, Paul, you had brought up in the past the, consolidation of the additive industry, and you have some more news on that front. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so if you guys remember, like a year ago, Saint-Gobain, or Saint-Gobain, as all of our sales guys in this company like to refer to them, because we sell stuff to them over in France. Saint-Gobain, like a year ago, got into a deal to buy Chryso, put an enterprise value on that of about 1.2 billion euros, and believe it or not, the multiple in that sale was 12x EBITDA. I mean, boys, for a chemical company, like 12x is doing something now. All right,
That's a payday.
Yeah, so that was good. So good for those guys. Well, 6 months later, Saint-Gobain goes out and spends another 1.3 billion to buy Grace Construction Products. So now you got both those entities under one parent company selling additives to the concrete and cement market. And this week, we find out that Saint-Gobain has decided to sell off pieces of the Chryso business. Now, the announcement comes out, and it's a little bit odd. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't give a lot of detail. It just says that they're putting out a bunch of, just selling off part of Chryso to Euclid, of all people. And so I had to do a little digging, all right? Your boy went into the internet archives, like the archives of the flipping internet, to try and figure out what was going on. And I found that between March 1st and April 1st, I believe April 1st was the day of the edit, Chryso changed their website. And what I noticed was they deleted an entire section of their website that was related to cement additives. So they had it broken down between concrete additives and cement additives. So Chryso went in April 1st, about a month ago from this recording, and edited it and took it out. It's not there anymore. They deleted it. So I think we can all read in. That was in anticipation of the closing of this sale. So all their cement additives, we're talking grinding aids and air trainers and some kind of early age activators that they were selling to the Portland limestone cement guys. They sold all of that to Euclid. So it's interesting. As things keep consolidating, people are selling things back and forth. And what I'll add, last thing I'll say, let you boys jump in here, is when Saint-Gobain bought Chryso, that they paid a good number for it, and they kind of told their investors, they're like, hey, it's going to take 3 years for you to see return on this. That's what they were putting it at, 3 years. And when you see the divestiture 1 year later like this, it makes me wonder, how does that factor in? Does that get them their money faster? Are they looking at this? Is this a money grab? What's going on that they wanted to divest all the cement additives when PLC is popping off? Portland limestone, and we'll get in that with Wilbanks today. Portland limestone cement's popping off. So if you've got one of the activators to help that product and you're selling it now, seems like a value buy for Euclid.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a good buy for Euclid in my opinion. And I actually have something I'm going to bring up here in a little bit about earnings for a large contracting company. And we get into it a little bit deeper with Wilbanks in this upcoming interview. It's a super volatile time to buy anything. You don't necessarily want to be in a massive amount of debt right now because of the volatility of the market. So maybe they're selling a very viable cash flow section of their business because they have to.
I'd love to know the background on the selling of those cement additives, because the one that's intriguing, of course, is, are they selling these early age activators into the Portland limestone cement manufacturing process? Is that real? You don't hear a lot about that. And so it's like, is that real? Is that a chemical that's really going into that process? Or is there a lot of that? Is this really going to take off as PLC entrenches into the market and really solidifies itself here in 2022? And if so, why would you get rid of it? Because Portland limestone cement is now approved in 44 out of the 50 state DOTs. The state DOTs did something they never do. They push the rules aside. They didn't make you go out and test every single person with every additive combination. The DOT was just like, yeah, just send me a generic report with the Portland limestone cement substitution and we'll green light it. And just fast track this whole thing. It's unbelievable. So if you've got a product that got fast tracked by almost every state, and you've got an additive that goes into that, it is an activator. I don't know, man. Why give that up? To me, I just think Euclid made a good buy.
I agree that they made a good buy. I'm more curious as to why the sale was possible in the first place. Of all the things to sell off, that's probably one of the easiest things for them to sell off. That's probably one of the most attractive offerings that they had. But at the same time, you're looking into the near future about how, these cement additives are going to be all important as we move towards, and I hate to say this, but as we move towards carbon neutrality, because we all know that's a BS buzz term. But, that's going to be a very popular line of products. So why they're giving that away now, to your point, Paul, is a little bit puzzling, and I'd love to know why exactly, if we'll ever know. But I'm also curious to the effectiveness, efficiency, the viability of such products, because if you're telling me there's a cement additive that they can add to gain higher early strengths to where you can in turn use less cement and gain earlier strengths with some of these mixed designs, I would assume they'd be shouting something like that from the rooftops, and I haven't seen it quite yet. I know it exists, but how effective they are, maybe someone knows better than I do. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a couple of dirty secrets about the Portland limestone cement. And make no mistake, we here are big supporters. We know this stuff's going to carbon neutral, whether we like that direction or not. That's where things are going. So we better hop on this train and figure out what works and what doesn't. And Portland limestone cement is one of the things that looks like it works. Well, here's a couple little secrets from that business, all right? Secret number one, because you're removing the clinker, which is the activating ingredient, it's the active ingredient that really gives you your cure, and you're replacing it with just the limestone dust, you have in effect reduced your activation of that cement as a whole. And so you have to do something to compensate for that. And so what do? Well, they end up grinding it just a little bit finer so that when you run the blane, you get a fine blane on it. Wilbanks will go into that a little bit about how it can be a little misleading with the limestone dust that's already fine. But, a little trick of the trade, they're grinding that a little bit finer to compensate for that. Another thing that they're doing potentially are these activators, which, I've never even heard of. So is this going on, like Josh was saying, is this going on stealthily so that the PLC is performing one-to-one with the OPC? I mean, maybe it is. And here is the last kicker. When you go to buy the PLC cement from one of these guys, one of the things that they have to do when they sell it to you is they have to give you a limestone concentration. So when they sell it, whether you're going to Union Bridge or whatever cement mill you're going to, Roberta, across a couple companies here, when you go to their cement mill and you get that report and you go to buy it, it actually states on there in parentheses like 10%. 12%. It actually says a number on there, and what that number indicates.
It's like you're buying gasoline.
Yes,
actually 15% ethanol in it.
That's a great analogy. So it's exactly like that, and you buy it and you know what you're getting. Here's a little dirty little secret about that. It's already got 4 or 5% lime dust in it. So when they put 10% on there, you're not getting a 10% reduction in CO2. You're getting like 5%. Because it probably already had 5% in it, and they know that they're not necessarily hiding the ball with that. They just want consumers to be aware that when you see that, you don't then get to market, hey, I got 10%. You probably got 5%, and they know that because they know that the maximum PLC content or the limestone content is probably going to be 15%, and so that's where you get that 10% reduction number from, going from 5 to 15. So they're not lying to you there, but just to be aware as a consumer, if you see that percentage number, that's not the percent that you're reducing the clinker by. It probably starts at like 5% and then goes up from there to whatever that number is, giving you a 5 to 7%. And you may be asking, where did that come from? Where did that number come from? Why are they stopping at 10%? There's been a ton of research done on that topic. What is the most limestone dust you can put in there and still get like all the workability, strengths, everything else that goes into it, and really that number, that 5% more lime going up to 10% total lime, is really kind of that sweet spot for most people. But you may see a couple out there that could be 11 or 12 or 13.
That's definitely not the last time we're going to be talking about PLCs. After this episode, I'm sure it'll come up many times. And as always, we keep an eye on the markets, and we're watching Saint-Gobain and Euclid and the rest of them as they continue to bat the ball back and forth to one another and selling off pieces and buying pieces and things of that nature. Because, honestly, at this point, I don't foresee a new contender coming into the market. You basically have what you have, and they're going to continue to consolidate and change in a few different ways. But,
I'll say is the problem with a new guy getting into the market, where I don't see that happening right now either, is people. You got to have the manpower to staff that, to have people that know what they're talking about, and that is hard. There are not a lot of those guys out there. It's a limited pool, and so to come in and be able to staff that, and as we had Anirban Basu, Dr. Basu was here as an economist telling us, like, what is going on with this economy? Why does everything seem like everything's kind of broken? And why does every facet seem a little bit off? Like, what is that? And he said the common denominator was people. If you're going to open up a new business like that and you have to have specialty people, man, that's gonna be rough.
It's crazy. Just all across every industry you can possibly think of, from construction to service to manufacturing to trucking, no one has the manpower. I'm at a loss to what all of these people are doing. You're looking at a population of over 330 million people, and no one has enough people.
Did you see the jobs report? We're recording this first week of May. The April jobs report just come out. What's interesting is when you look at just the jobs report, because we're talking about can't find people, where are all the people? the jobs have posted pretty regular, pretty steady comeback under the Biden administration since he came into office. The jobs reports were always like wildly inconsistent, but if you just track that as a trend line over the last 15 months, you see it's a very steady climb back up almost to where we were pre-pandemic level. We're not there yet. Still like, I think he's like 5% away from that. So 5% of the market left, the job people who were working left and didn't come back. That's kind of where we are right now. But it seems like there's a lot more than that are going unfilled, because before the pandemic, we don't remember seeing all these help wanted signs in every store on Main Street. And now I can't go down the street without seeing a help wanted ad. People need people. So I'm not sure where they're at either, Josh, but we're getting really close to pre-pandemic workforce. Labor participation rates are up. The actual jobless claims is down. Unemployment rates are down. But there's like this 5% gap where you just got to fill in where those people are. I don't know, man. Maybe some of them retired. I really don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. They're all just kind of guessing. But the numbers say we're not far off, but Main Street tells you we're way behind.
Yeah. The numbers that you speak of, that you reference, it just doesn't pass the eye test to me.
Yeah, isn't that something though? It's weird that we can all see one thing out on the street, and then on paper you're like, man, kind of reminds me of mixed designs that we do. You're like, man, this mixed design looks great. And,
It looked great in the lab.
Yeah, but out there on site, old boy's coughing rock soap out of his pump.
That's a good point. Well, speaking of things that look good in the lab, that's a perfect segue to what Joey Bell was talking about a little bit earlier. And this goes with the theme that we've touched on many times is, by God, you can put anything in concrete. And now we got one more thing to add to the list. Tell us about it, Joey Bell.
Yeah, I think we need a T-shirt at this point with some kind of silhouette, and it's just filled with words of different things that we found that people have put in concrete. I've seen a couple similar T-shirts or whatever like that, but I think we could do one for items or products that you find in concrete. Well, this article decided to put tires in concrete, and that's tires for everyone north of Louisville and west of Texas. So globally, there's 1.5 billion tires discarded every year, and less than 1% of those are actually reused. And just in Australia, this is where the article came from, Australia. In Australia alone, 51 million tires are sent to landfills. And as we all know, rubber doesn't really degrade very well or at all, and so they just accumulate. So if you've got a bunch of stuff just accumulating everywhere, what else are you going to do with it except put it in concrete, apparently?
Yeah, the two options are always light it on fire or put it in concrete.
Well, the good thing about tires, if you light them on fire, they're going to last forever too.
Right.
So they're calling it crumb rubber concrete, and I didn't actually know that crumb rubber was actually a pretty common term. They call it crumb rubber like the rubber mulch, quote unquote mulch that you see around playgrounds, AstroTurf or artificial turf.
Yeah, that's stuff they put on the football fields.
Yeah, it's shredded rubber. So they're putting
Does not taste good.
Doesn't taste good.
Can confirm.
So they're putting this stuff in the concrete, and it's up to 20% sand replacement. It's yielding higher impact resistance. It's better thermal and acoustic insulation. It weighs a lot less than conventional concrete, by the cubic foot. It acts like regular concrete, pumps, screeds, finishes, and this article says it actually required less physical effort to handle that concrete. They find that it does very well through batch plants. There's no problem, sending it through the plant. Mixes up well in the truck, and it actually washes out, makes the washout easier in the truck. So that was really interesting. And as I was digging, the article never really said like what size, this rubber is. The shredded rubber that we're pretty familiar with, it's like 1/2 inch in some cases, or 1/4 inch or so, or it could be just shards of rubber.
The stuff they put on the football fields looks almost like sand in a way, maybe a little bit bigger than sand.
Yeah, I've never seen
it. It's actually mixed with sand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was that was kind of what I was wondering. I was wondering, what kind of or what size is this rubber that they're putting in there, and they grind it up and they grade it, just like you guys said, just like sand. There's half inch, there's quarter inch sifted, 10 mesh, 20 mesh minus, and 30 mesh. So there's all kinds of different gradations of rubber, and they're putting it in the concrete. So I just thought that was really interesting, and another item that we could add to our list of random things that they put in concrete.
I think it's got more of a chance than all that crushed glass and all that other stuff they want to put in it. At least tires are, I mean, it's freaking like literally waste that can be shredded pretty easily. It's already being sold. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's being used for so many other things. There's no reason, it shouldn't be successful. And I wonder, are they putting that like with the impact resistance and everything else? That sounds like a paving mix to me, I guess. Putting roadways, airfield paving, all that stuff. And then if it's lightweight, that's, you're looking at buildings and high rises at that point, bridges.
Yeah. The problem a lot of times with concrete guys is we hear about stuff like this and we just laugh. Like, hey, did you hear they put tires in concrete? And we're just like, yeah, okay. I'm gonna go back to doing what I was doing. Thanks for enlightening me. So once we get over that hurdle of people just laughing at it and maybe actually make concrete with it, we'll see what happens.
That's our inbred elephants coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's better than the last story you brought us, putting, blood sacrifices or some crap in the concrete.
That was blood in the Martian concrete.
Yeah, it was blood concrete. No, the last article was the sand mafia, which was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Blood sand.
Blood sand. Blood diamonds,
sand.
blood sand.
Bro. What a market.
Yeah, think about all the people you would save by using tires instead of your black market Middle Eastern sand.
Oh my gosh! Save the whales. Save the sand.
Yep, saving the planet one tire at a time.
Moving away from the sand mafia and moving towards union mafias. Which is
the best segue we've ever had. That was fantastic.
Which is a thing.
Sopranos.
And I make no bones about it. I'm not a huge fan of unions. They're not all created equal. And I would love to have somebody from a union reach out to us, whether you're a part of one or whether you run one or whether you feel differently than me and have convictions toward your point of view. I'd love to talk to you. A true fight me in the comments section moment, if you will. But I have an update on the Teamsters Local 174 union in Seattle that we were talking about a few episodes ago. Basically, they halted the driver supply. Meanwhile, there were construction delays and massive traffic delays and so on and so forth. And they were going back and forth with about 9 different proposals. And we got about 5 months into this union strike, and they were striking for higher wages, obviously, because that's what unions do. And better health care benefits for recent retirees, which, okay. And they got to a point where it was stalemate, it was stagnant. So about 5 months went by, and the union said, well, we got to get back to work. We're losing support here from our own members, from the public, from our donators, investors, whatever you'd like to call them. So one construction drive. The article referred to as a face-saving statement. The union came out and said, our members love our community and are returning to work for the people of Seattle. So, make no bones about it. The unions are for the people.
Yeah.
I say with tongue-in-cheek.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah, the union emphasized that a few workers have been called back to work, but the builders they're ready for concrete, but they were complaining that the drivers weren't called back to work sooner. So, they're still throwing trash on the lawn here. The companies indicated from the outset that they can't immediately return the drivers to work because you have to take back trucks that were loaned to third parties to make up for the driver shortage in the first place, and then you have to inspect the trucks that these union drivers will be driving to make sure that they meet standards, before the deliveries can resume. So it wasn't a, snap your fingers and everything goes back to the way it should be. They went back to work about mid-April, though, so by about now, things should be back to where they were pre-strike as far as, truck supply and driver supply. And then, of course, to put the cherry on top of this cake, the local 174 union put out a statement on April 8th, the day that the strikes officially ended, saying, and I quote, "Striking Teamsters offer gracious, unconditional return to work for all state ready-mix concrete and dump truck drivers." So thank you to the gracious union overlords of Local 174 for getting Seattle construction back to work.
Yeah, there's only so long you can keep like major bridges inactive before the public's like, "Hey, bro, wait, what do you like? What are you asking for?" And they're like, "Oh, we want lifetime health care from our employees." It's like, "Oh, you play football?" Like, no, no, no.
No, we drive dump trucks.
We drive trucks. Like, oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
you need to get back to work, Bubba. And so glad to see that they're back to work. Get all that hammered out. I'm with you, Josh, man. I'd love to have a union boss, on the program just to tell us, maybe there's something we're missing, because right now everything we think we know about unions, it's like, bro, just the companies do a good job, and if private companies aren't doing a good job, then people can leave those companies and work for other companies that are.
There's never been a better time to do so.
Yeah, so the whole union thing is just very, very strange. Glad to see those guys are back to work. Pennsylvania Aggregates and Concrete Association is very anti-mandate of any kind, and so when the new infrastructure package went through, the bipartisan infrastructure deal went through the government, and one of the issues there was they were mandating that you use unions on these jobs, and so or if it wasn't in that bill, it came afterwards. Either way, they're trying to force unions onto these projects, and PACA stood up and was like, "Hang on a second, like that is not good for the taxpayer. You can't mandate something like that that's going to have higher costs, longer delays, more regulation, and cause problems. Like, let the market work here. You're talking about taxpayer dollars to do stuff. We should take those constituents into account." And so, the PACA put out like an incredible letter, like sort of reprimanding the federal in the nicest way. The reason it was an incredible letter is because it explained both sides so well. Like, hey, we understand like why you want to do this with the unions and what benefit you think the unions bring, but like that's not reality. And here's reality, and here's why you need to consider what we're saying beyond just the fact of who we are. You really need to consider it for on the merits, and they spelled that out very, very plainly. So being as active as this space is where I live, I'm sure I can find the other side of the argument. So we'll look into that. Hopefully one reaches out to us, eager to take on this opportunity to talk to us. But in the meantime, we'll start searching.
Right on. Yeah, I will be your sacrificial lamb. Come on in and school me. I'm ready for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a feeling that'd be one of the things where we'd have to really do our research and be ready for these guys, because they're going to come. They're going to come hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I might have to consult some experts and actually put a few laborious hours into getting my mind right for that one.
No, dude, you'll have to come in like back President Trump's press secretary that he had. She's come in with that binder. Like had all the
Kayleigh
answers.
McEnany.
Yeah, she had all the answers to all the questions, and she said that you're gonna have to come with that, dude. You're like, oh shoot, he's bringing up wages. I better flip to W. Wages. All right, here's what I got.
Yeah, man. When she started flipping around in that binder, you knew you were about to get it. Speaking of coming with receipts, I got one last thing to bring up to you guys. We've talked about Tudor Perini in the past because they're pretty much they're in the news a lot because they're such a huge contractor. I mean, they're top 5 contractor in this country, easy, if not top 3. So they're a good barometer of what's going on a massive macro scale. And I just wanted to bring up that they posted a loss of $21.6 million or 42 cents per share for the first quarter. The analyst expectations were 9 cents in profit. They ended up with a 42-cent loss per share for Q1. And they wrote off a combined $43.1 million in charges for 2 projects in its civil segment. So that was in large part due to the loss. Through the press release, the CEO and the CFO, both kind of gave positive statements saying that, they have a cash backlog. They were ready for this. They went to court for a bridge in New York. Basically, the bridge ruling in New York was a post-bid design change for the City Island Bridge in the Bronx, and it caused them to change the style of bridge from like your original cable style to a different style where they weren't needed as much in that project, and ended up losing $25.5 million because of that. They tried to get that money back, and they lost that suit in court. So that was a huge loss to them. But with all that being said, they what they were positive about, which is what we were actually talking about in recent episodes, our reservation to the market was, are these companies going to be paying their bills? Because a lot of these large contractor businesses, they bankroll the next job with the current job, and if they're not getting paid for the current job, then there's a vacuum there, of a cash vacuum there. So these guys reiterated that as far as fiscal guidance goes, the highlight of the firm's result was from its overwhelmingly positive cash flow. The company attributed to its customers stepping out of the shadow of your COVID-19 crisis segment, and they're actually paying their bills, and they were able to collect a massive amount of operating capital from their clients who were either shut down during the pandemic or not making payments. So what they saw was there's a strong cash generation cycle in 2022 where of anything that was more or less unknown, that was the biggest unknown, was how the cash flow would be moving out of the pandemic. So they did say that was strong. They also said that the company's bidding on $6 billion worth of projects in the next 3 weeks. So
Wow.
Shooters gonna shoot. They're looking at a $3 billion Maryland Express Lane job, a $2.5 billion Newark Air Train replacement project, and a river bridge in New Jersey that's $350 million. And they also went on to say something that was pretty interesting to me in this press release. They said that of those 4 jobs, the biggest ones only had one other bidder. And they said very rarely are they competing with more than 2 companies at a time. Especially in today's climate, these larger billion-plus dollar jobs, they're so large and demand so much infrastructure and resources that, there's only 3 to 5 companies nationwide that are able to even bid on those projects. So what they're doing because of that, because there isn't that competitive of a marketplace, they're actually bumping up their profit margins. And they're keeping relatively high profit margins because they only have to compete with 1 or 2 other companies. And if they need to address that profit margin to gain the job, then they will. But because that marketplace isn't as competitive as you would think it'd be, and they only have 1 or 2 other competitors, the profit margins on these new bidded jobs are fairly high.
That's crazy. There's only like 2 or 3 other guys that trying to go after that business. That's wild. But it makes a little bit of sense, but still shocking. It's shocking to me there's that few people.
It takes a massive amount of resources to take on projects like that. And I would imagine one of their largest competitors has to be Whiting Turner, right? They're a huge presence here on the East Coast. And then there's a few down around the Texas area, but I'm sure there are more out there, but at any given time, there's only a few different companies that can bid on projects nationwide simultaneously.
Yeah, I just saw where Whiting Turner got like a $500 million or $1 billion. It was a new casino or something going up in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, hey, I got one more thing to add before we jump into Wilbanks. So one of the things that we always do with our guests is we ask them what's the craziest thing they've seen on a job site. And we've had Wilbanks on before, so maybe that's why we didn't think to ask it. But I can't let the people go without hearing some kind of crazy story. So I got one for you. The other night I was on one of these Amazon type jobs, and I'm not gonna say who it was, but it was like 4 a.m, and everybody's running around like crazy because, of course, nothing ever goes right at 4 a.m. So firing up, and old boy pulls his truck under the chute to get loaded, and he steps out of the truck, like start washing it off or cleaning something as he's waiting on it, as he's waiting on the loading to begin. And as he's doing his little thing, he walks over to rinse something off, and lo and behold, the concrete truck that was sitting on this bit of an incline, which is how they do it, it starts rolling off, and it rolls backwards and starts heading straight for this newly propped up warehouse. And boys, when I tell you that you ain't never heard shouting at 4 o'clock in the morning, like when this partially loaded ready-mix truck so the emergency brake failed on the truck, and it just starts rolling off. You got a whole team of guys chasing it. You know, thank God nobody was walking behind that truck, like in the path of it. Nobody was on the road because it rolled quite a way, and there was no other like machine traffic or anything. Thank God, and they were able to get back up in that truck, get in it, and the driver didn't leave the cab for the rest of the day. So close call there. It's our safe start story for the day.
Was this a mobile site? Mobile concrete site?
Yeah.
Man, not to throw them all under the bus at the same time, but one reservation I always have is the fact that those trucks aren't road legal because they don't have to be. But because of that, man, I always fear that a lot of that general maintenance stuff gets overlooked because they don't have to deal with DOT. They don't have to be road safe or road legal. I mean, they beat the ever-loving crap out of these trucks because you just move them from job site to job site on lowboys. So as long as they can start and roll and dispense concrete, they'll use them. But, man, far too often they got lights busted out and mirrors broken off. And, some sites have better trucks than others, but they're all inadequate compared to all the other trucks you see over the road.
Well, another thing, too, since they're on private property, their drivers don't have to have a CDL. So you probably have some guys in there that may have never even operated some kind of a piece of equipment like that, and you throw them in a concrete truck.
Never even thought about that.
Because that was my
It's 100%.
that was my deal. At the last job, we were on the airport property. I didn't have to have a CDL, so I drove concrete truck. I drove those giant off-road Terex dump trucks. I drove semi-trucks. I drove literally everything in the yard and didn't have to have the first kind of license to show for it. Had a driver's license. I don't even know if it's on private property that you have to have a driver's license. So I don't know. And then even further, I was talking to our guys out in Las Vegas, and they were mentioning that a lot of their guys have an automatic transmission only CDL, so they can only drive automatic vehicles. They can't drive a manual because they're not certified for it. So the bad thing about that is, when their automatic concrete truck breaks down and they have a spare manual on the yard, they can't drive it. So they have an empty truck, for the day, just sitting there, and nobody can drive it. Strange times we're living in.
As a certified gearhead, that hurts my heart, but I can understand it, man. I mean, you have younger guys that have never seen a manual transmission in their life at this point. So
Never even seen one. That's exactly right. And there was a meme floating around the other day. It was hilarious. It was like a night. I can't remember if it was a nice restaurant or a nice hotel, and it was a valet parking, and like they put an orange cone out and they taped a sign to it that said, no manual transmissions allowed for valet parking.
Golly.
Okay, well, can I tell you my favorite part of the story of the concrete truck rolling away? Because I don't want to blame any of the worker guys there, because the guy set the parking brake. He did what he was supposed to do, and he wasn't out of line with anything he did. Just the brake failed, and nobody got hurt. It's all fine. But after the truck rolled off, and everybody's like, "Oh no, there's the truck." As soon as they got it back, we all just kind of looked at each other and just shrugged our shoulders, like, "Huh," and just got back to making concrete. Like, well, nothing really happened, I guess. So let's go.
Golly.
Yeah. They are. There's been plenty of times, and I consider myself under the bus here because HR probably isn't listening anyway. But there's been plenty of times in my personal life where I'm using the specific brand of safety glasses called squints, and something flies up and hits me in the forehead or something, or in the nose, or something pretty close to the eyeball, and I kind of stop and pause, and that was close. Then I get right back after it.
Yeah, that was 100% a story from your personal life, and not at all indicative of how we do our work professional life. But
absolutely. Well, and I will say, no joking aside, I'm being 100% truthful here. God's honest truth, hand to God. At work, I am much more safer than I am in my personal life, because I realize if I get hurt at work, they are going to be pissed. Like, I'll be damned if I'm getting hurt on the job site or at work without safety glasses on. Like, I'm not about to be that guy that causes an entire all-hands safety meeting because I did something wrong. Like, I am not trying to be that dude.
Yeah, I don't want to fill out the paperwork.
Nope.
well, in my personal life, I had people ask me, like, why do you wear safety glasses when you're weed eating and running a push mower? Like, man, how many things? I can't even tell you how many times I've been hit in the eye with like a rock, but had a safety glasses on, and just click, it just bounces off, and you're like, hell yeah, screw all you people that are laughing at me. I'm not. I still have my left eye. It's happened more than once that I've kicked a rock into my eye with a weed eater. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't talk bad on safety equipment. I completely understand the necessity for it. Well, I mean, to an extent. Safety glasses, I'm a huge proponent of. If you're wearing a hard hat in the middle of nowhere with no falling objects even present, having to wear a hard hat 100% of the time is dumb. But liability, I get it.
Yeah, because you can't tell somebody you can take it on, take it off, take it on, take it off, because that you're just risking that they're gonna walk into a situation where I forgot I didn't have it on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One that I say is I thought was a little weird, like the whole like high visibility clothing. But as soon as you get into a situation where it's dark outside, you realize like how legit that high vis stuff is, and you're like, man, some guy just walks across the parking lot without his vest on. You're like, and you start shaking your head, like that guy's taking a risk, and that's crazy because I never thought like a safety was really that big of a deal. But man, these late night pours and stuff, I realized how wrong I was.
Yeah, if there's one piece of safety equipment that I have no argument about wearing, it's that safety vest, because safety glasses and hard hats and everything, that kind of keeps you from hurting yourself. High vis will keep somebody else from running over you.
Oh, that's a good point. The newest, like all those things are super viable. I get it. No arguments from me there. My newest laughable safety measure, though, I've been on a few jobs where they have a pre-work stretch session. You guys see these?
Yep.
No.
Seeing old Bubba over there, he just got done smoking a pack of lights. he wolfed down a Bang energy drink real quick before his shift started, and he's over there trying to touch his toes and get limber before the job starts. Because it's mandated, and they're looking around each other like third grade gym class or something. They're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna act busy right now."
It's
Look at me, I'm
construction
stretching."
yoga.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Hilarious.
No, that's what happens when people in companies write policies that have no idea anything about the people that work for them or the business that they're in. And I kind of felt that way when today, it's actually exactly how I felt today when, reading the news about Chryso selling their cement additives to Euclid. And all the press releases and everything I could find about it, it read like some finance nerd wrote a statement on what they sold. And I was like, no. Like, I want to know what those additives are used for. What were they going into? What were they? How big is this? Like, what are we doing? And that's why I had to freaking go into the Internet Archives and figure out, all right, what did Chryso change on their website? Because I couldn't find it. Couldn't find it on the Chryso website. I was like, I have no idea what they sold. This doesn't make any sense. So I had to see like what they altered in the last month on their website so I could figure out what on earth is going on. Just those people have no idea the markets that are interested in this information. They thought the only people to be interested were finance nerds, so they wrote their statement for finance nerds. That grinds my gears.
Oh, man. Well, to get away from the finance nerds and get into the people that actually make this industry go around, we're going to bring in our guest here. As previously stated, we have Matt Wilbanks back on the show. We enjoy talking to him, and we do so on the side, personally all the time. He's good personal friends of the show and the guys running it. But his insight is particularly valuable for us because we're going to go into the cement industry because a lot's changing in that industry and will continue to be. moving forward. So he's got a lot of great insight for us. It's a great conversation. So without further ado, this is Matt Wilbanks from Buzzi Cement. Y'all enjoy.
All right, welcome back to the show. Matt Wilbanks, Buzzi Cement. Love him, hate him, whatever. Doesn't matter to us because he's our friend. We'll stick up for him no matter what all the people say about him. Wilbanks, appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's the sacrifices we make to keep this world going, man. You know, it's all right. But we have you on here for a very, very important reason. All kidding aside, we are dealing with something in the Southeast United States that is affecting the concrete world, and that is a cement shortage. And we brought you in here to give us the skinny, man. What on earth is going on out there?
Well, I guess the short version is ready-mix production has gone up every year for the past 10 years in a row, and no one's built a cement plant in about 12 years. So right now, demand is outstripping supply. As an industry, we've been an import market for the past few years, and if you noticed, I don't know if you have, there's some constraints on international shipping due to some international factors. So there's been some challenges bringing in imports to make up for the shortfall of domestic production.
Yeah, we definitely have been importing a lot, and that's on both coasts. We've covered that here as well. And one of the things about shipping things in from Europe especially, man, we're seeing some insane price hikes right now. So not only can we not get enough material, but the word on the street is there's double-digit price increases coming, and then it may be 2 more double-digit dollar price increases coming after those. I mean, Wilbanks, talk to me, man. I feel like I'm living in crazy land right now. What's happening?
I don't get into the pricing aspect directly. I can say that we had the COVID issue, which affected shipping, and now there's an issue going on in Ukraine. I don't know if you're aware, but that's interrupting some of the cement production that goes on there. That's tons being pulled out of the market, which can have cascading effects. Last year, there was a cement plant that had a kiln issue go down, and the plant was down for 8 months. And, well, that didn't just affect Texas because that pulled a lot of tons out of the market. Those tons were still in demand. It had cascading effects across the nation. We're seeing some similar things happen right now. I knew some customers last week. We had a nice good rain day on a Tuesday in one part of the world where I was. They were still pouring. They were still doing business. Typically, you're slower on, you don't do much on rain days, so you build inventory. You're typically slower during the winter, so you build inventory. We weren't slow last winter to build inventory, and no one's taking rain days off. So, everybody in the whole market's just running wide open right now. It's an exciting time, in the construction industry. We are definitely going.
You think that's about to slow down, though? I mean, is that what you're seeing?
We're not seeing any signs of it. No, we're not seeing any signs of any slowdown at all this year from a market standpoint and an official standpoint. Personally, as an amateur economist, I can tell you it's not going to go on forever. The market will go down and for a while, and it'll go back up, and it'll go back down again. I see a lot of things personally that I think reminds me of, '07 and whatnot, some signs there that I think could be on the horizon, but don't know when, don't know what the trigger will be, but, know it can't continue forever. It never does.
Bro, speculating is our favorite thing to do on here. So I appreciate Bootsie's official response, but let's get into your unofficial response. I like that a lot more. So, when I'm reading the Wall Street Journal every morning, and everybody's scared out of their mind. They think these recessions are coming, and I just don't even see it. Like, all the numbers say that we should be heading for a bunker somewhere, but you look out the window and, man, this stuff's getting built. Projects are getting greenlit. It's not like when COVID hit. Like, when COVID hit, everybody pulled back. All the investors pulled back. All the projects shut down. Everything. This isn't like that. Everybody's going, yeah, those numbers do look kind of weird on paper, but I got a shopping mall that's still getting built tomorrow. So I don't know what to tell you. We're going forward.
Everyone was just going ham in 1929 until they thought they righted the ship on Friday. Weekend happens, and then Black Tuesday, and the market crashed, and we went into a Great Depression. I think the similar thing will come here. This is me, personal speculation. I don't know who it is, but someone's going to panic, and then someone else is going to panic right behind them, and the dominoes will fall. I don't know when. It could be 6 months out. It might be 2 years out. I don't know. It could be next week. That's my, as an amateur economist watching it. But
What do you see, Josh? I mean, we had Anirban Basu on here. He was saying a recession is possible. He wasn't sure it was likely, but that was months ago, and things have changed significantly. The Fed just increased, the rate by 50 basis points. So that's signaling something's going on. Josh, how are you reading this?
It has a lot to do with policy. In my unofficial, unprofessional opinion, it has a lot to do with policy. And right now, without making this a political podcast, the current administration is handcuffing our abilities as a nation to be self-sufficient, both in the energy sector, the supply sector, the service industry sector. We're really being handcuffed right now on what we can do and how efficient we can be as an economy, because right now the issue we have is the fact that we have too much money going after too few goods, as Anirban Basu said on our podcast, and that's what's leading to inflation and supply issues and so on and so forth. So if we fix that problem, if we increase the amount of goods that are available, that's going to go a long way in fixing the inflation issues that we see. Another thing that I'm, I guess, encouraged by is you still see help wanted signs everywhere. The difference between now and 07, 08 is that everywhere is hiring. I mean, all you need is a heartbeat and two brain cells rubbed together, and you can go find a job right now. And I think that's the difference between now and then. Will that continue? Who knows? Who knows? But I think if we can get some administration in some key areas that enables our country to produce what we're capable of producing, I feel like that'll go a long way in fixing a lot of the issues that we're seeing with the economy today.
It's interesting. I get concerned, though. Like, I don't know that the elections in November are going to change these issues we have with shortages. Because what I thought was most surprising, so we have a project that our product's in, and it was supposed to have already started like 2 months ago, but they couldn't get cement, which I thought sounded kind of weird. And then another guy we're working with said, oh, hey, we can't get aggregates. And you're like, what is going on? And then official associations are saying, oh, yeah, we can't supply anything. And then you've got other industries that are outside of ours that are like, oh, yeah, by the way, there's a shortage of baby formula. 30% of the states don't even have baby formula. And so it's not just isolated construction. It seems like it's everywhere. There's shortages everywhere. So Wilbanks comes on here and tells me there's supply chain issues going around the globe. And apparently there's a war in Ukraine I haven't heard about. And so he says that we got these issues. And I heard earlier this week there are some policy things, like Josh said, that are impacting things. And one of them was these carbon tax credits in Europe. And they're limiting how much cement certain countries in the EU can even make. And if they go over that allotment, they get hammered with carbon taxes. And it's a real problem right now because, as Wilbanks said, we're importing a lot of that cement, and they're wary of making any more. And then when they're being pushed to make more, prices are going through the roof. You heard any of that kind of stuff, Wilbanks?
I'm involved in some international committees, but most of my involvement is domestic. Domestically, there's the PCA, the Portland Cement Association, and we've got a roadmap to carbon neutrality by 2050. A lot of companies in the industry have signed on to that. The cement industry is responsible for about 1.25% of total carbon emissions in the U.S. I like to frame that with, we use a lot of our product. It's the active ingredient in concrete, and I'm sure as everyone listens to this podcast knows how much concrete is consumed every year. So, I like to like to preface that when you talk about that big number is, well, it's used a lot. So it's important to have that perspective. Further, what that leads to is if we can reduce our carbon emissions by 5%, yeah, 5% is good, but also that's a lot of tons because we make a lot of our product. So that'll translate to a lot. We're on path for that, carbon neutrality by 2050. First step in that is a type 1L cement to reduce carbon emissions there. A lot of companies are rolling that out right now, and you're going to see some of that. If you haven't seen it already, you're going to see it very soon. And some other changes to try and get towards that goal.
Yeah, we're seeing it roll out in a lot of places, trying to get our hands around this cement shortage that's going on. You don't think any of that is related to the changeover from Type 1.2 to PLC being introduced in the market, do you?
The two being related?
Yeah. Is there any correlation there, or is that two completely separate things?
It's two separate issues. It just happens to be, I guess, fortuitous timing for us to be rolling out a 1L cement at the same time. Everyone's buying every bit of powder they can find, so the customers aren't investigating it real hard. We've worked really hard. I personally have in the lab testing concrete with our new 1L cement against our 1.2 historics to make sure that the performance is going to be very similar. I can speak to what I've done is very similar performance at our companies. But there's varying degrees, just like there's always varying variances in different cements from plant to plant. So you're going to see some of that as well. Some of them I've seen done competitive testing and then seen different results. It's really a wider range I've seen from the performance of 1Ls in the market than your standard 1.2s. I've seen some of them that don't perform as well as 1.2s. I've seen some of them that perform more like type 3s, depending on other factors in them. So I think you're going to see a wider range of performance, but there are adjustments that will need to be made industry-wide as we continue down this pace forward. One of them is the whole industry needs to work on reducing cement content in mixes. There's a lot of over-designed mixes out there for a myriad of reasons. I know we love to beat up testing labs, but one of the biggest things that you see a lot of is improper curing of cylinders on job site. Well, if you properly cured the cylinders on the job site, then you could pull some cement out of those mixes because you wouldn't have to compensate for that. Then another one is some of these construction schedules. They like to pull cable at 24 hours. So they want 3750 in 24 hours. The deck's design strength requirements are only 5,000 psi. If you're getting 3750 in 24 hours, you're going to break 10,000 psi on that mix. So what you've ended up throwing a lot of extra cement at this. There's a way to be more efficient about that, because that's part of what we're going to have to do to reach these carbon goals, is as an industry look at some of those things and make adjustments. It can't all just be, the cement guys have to figure out how to make cement without producing any CO2. I don't think that's fair burden to put on us.
I got a question though. So in the manufacturing of the 1L cement, and specifically talking about Portland limestone cement here, the additional 5 to 10% limestone that goes in, is that being added at the same time that the gypsum goes in, so that you're doing that second grind? Is that added at the same time as the gypsum?
Yeah, that's part of the finish mill process. That's what's when you add it. You'll take your base clinker and you'll run it into your finish mill, and that's when you'll add your gypsum and your limestone and whatever grinding aid you're using in order to facilitate that grind.
When you do that, does it take any longer to manufacture that PLC cement than a traditional Type 1.2?
It can, if you grind it finer. See, the issue is the limestone is a softer material than your base clinker, so it's going to grind faster, finer. So if you were to run the same blane on a 1.2 and a 1L, it would actually be a higher blane on the 1L because of the limestone that's ground finer. So in order to get the same reactivity and get your clinker to be ground to the same fineness, you want to grind it a little bit longer in order to get it a little bit finer. So that's how you would track it that way.
That's interesting, because I was talking to one of your competitors in the market, one of the other cement suppliers, and they're converting their whole plant over to doing 1L, and I asked why, because it didn't seem like there was wide adoption yet. There was actually some not so favorable results with their product in the marketplace, and that's why I asked very frankly, like, why would you do this if everybody's mad at you? why are you gonna give them the product that they're mad at? And and at first he kind of wanted to say, well, maybe we just got to do a better job educating this and that. Like, no, we know how to make concrete. Something's going on here. Like, this stuff wasn't doing right. And he came, he finally said, you know what? It's our fault from a consistency standpoint. And he's like, we kept turning this mill off and making a little bit of 1L and then turning it back on to make more 1-2 and turning it back off to make more 1L. He's like, that on and off game at a cement plant, he's like, you're just screwing yourself over. You can make 2 half-decent products or you can make 1 really good product. And he's like, when we actually just sit there and run 1L for a long period of time, we get a much more consistent, much more favorable product. I thought that was a really, wise admission of them to say, yeah, we can't really make 2 products, not well. So we're just gonna stick to 1, and we're gonna do the very best we can. So my question to you, Matt, is what's Bootsy's take on that? Are you guys gonna end up doing the same thing, kind of just converting 100% of the production process over to these Portland limestone cements?
Yes, we will. By the end of this calendar year, we will have all of our United States plants 100% producing 1L. 2 of our plants have already switched over completely, and the other plants are phasing in as it's feasible. From a consistency standpoint, each plant's different, and the people at each plant are different. We have had success making, in the past, we would make a 1-2 product, and then we would make a masonry product, and we would also make type 3. And we've, partly because of the plants we have, and partly because of the great people we have at our plants, we've been able to transition from a 1-2 and to make a 1-3 type 3 product, and then back to the 1-2, and make very good type 3s and very good masonry products over the past few years. At least that I've been around. I'm sure they were doing great before I got here. The company didn't start with me. It is different when you don't make the same product every single day. Like some of those products, like a type 3, you might make it once a month. You'd make a run of it, and then you go back. And so the consistency is on a product like that. It's not always the same as when you're making, the product every day. But they still did a very good job of keeping it inside of our target parameters.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I saw the press release about you guys switching your plants over.
Yeah.
I missed the part where they were all coming online for 1L by the end of this year. That's pretty incredible. Would that may make you the market leader in that, if I'm not mistaken. Hey, let's jump into something real quick. So one of my favorite things about Wilbanks is after he listens to our podcast, he makes sure to call me and tell me how I was wrong about something. So guys, y'all should know that
the margins in ready mix aren't there to expand as quickly as they have without debt financing. There aren't that much profits in ready mix. Now there's a saying, when you owe the bank $1 million, you got a problem. When you owe the bank $1 billion, the bank has a problem. The bank doesn't want to be in the ready mix business. They're in the bank business, right? They loan money. So then they're going to try and turn around and sell it, especially if it's a recession. Like, bank's going to get, pennies on the dollar. So they don't really want to call that note.
Damn, I'll tell you what, that's interesting. Gears are turning inside my head here because I made a comment where the difference between now and 07, 08 is that anyone can go somewhere and get a job, and that's promising. However, in 07, 08, the issue was that the banks were selling subprime interest rate loans and disguising them as good ones. They were getting picked up and not paid back. issue that we've had the last couple of years is that debt was cheap, and business owners were borrowing money at a record pace, and they were buying, to your point, Wilbanks, that wasn't worth what they were paying for it. If you extrapolate that outward to the entire economy and a lot of different business avenues and industries where companies are borrowing money because it was cheap, and then it comes time to pay that note, and then the bank's underwater, maybe that's how that light switch moment that you described earlier happens.
We got a subprime business loans instead of subprime mortgage loans.
Yeah, our Black Tuesday is called because of business loans instead of mortgages now, this time. But same concept applies.
That's crazy. Yeah, private equity is spending money like there's no tomorrow there for years.
Yeah, and they were being told to. It's like, hey, you'll never have a better opportunity to borrow money than right now. It's basically free.
The market's taking a beating today. I think one of those days it's going to take a beating and somebody's going to get scared and pull out, and someone will follow them. And yeah, there's a lot of exposure out there, and exposure's fine as long as you're in a bull market. And right now everybody's running. And if you've noticed, a lot of the cement manufacturers are getting out of the vertical integration game. Part of that theory is maybe they weren't as great at running ready mix as they thought they were. I don't know. There's other theories. My company doesn't have a lot of vertical integration, very little. So it's not something that we're getting out of. But you see a lot of consolidation around the market. And then you start to see some concrete finishers wanting to get into the vertical integration. To me, I think it makes more sense for a construction company to be vertically integrated than for the cement manufacturers to vertically integrate by buying ready mix. It's kind of an issue because when you buy a ready mix operation as a cement manufacturer, you supply them. They exist to consume your cement. But then everyone else in the market doesn't want to buy from you because you're their competitor. Right? They're competing against that ready mix operation that you own. So it makes it hard to just sell to anybody in the market. And especially, certain times it makes sense that you'd like to be able to sell to anybody. I mean, obviously, you want to sell your product to as many potential customers as possible. So in one sense, you could be limiting yourself. But then you've got the other issues with contractors. They're going to want to supply themselves first. And are they going to consume all of what they produce? Or will they have a little left over to sell to some smaller guys? And then there's the question, are they going to give those guys any kind of service? Or are those guys just going to get, whatever scraps there are? And there's a certain level of service you need, or you're going to get cold joints and such like that. So it'd be interesting to see how that dynamic works out.
Well, it's interesting how that dynamic works out now. So the vertical integration on the cement side, the first, like you said, they own their own ready-mix people, and those ready-mix companies exist to consume the cement because the cement's the profitable side of the business. But what ends up happening in those situations is the cement companies overcharge their own people. And their own people are also the first people that get cut off when there's a supply constraint. So so it's interesting you're coming at it from the other way. If the finishers own the ready mix, then would they squeeze out their competition's ability to get supplied? Like you said, you can't just cut off in the middle of a 1,000-yard pour and be like, oh yeah, sorry, I need to direct 100 yards over to Joe Blow's massive swimming pool he's putting in his backyard. It's like, no, you can't do that.
I think the happy medium there, where you're talking about finishers getting into the ready mix business, I think a happy medium between then and not being in the business at all. This might be the point of the episode where Joey Bell comes in and talks about the benefits of volumetric truck.
Again?
We have a section of every single episode where Joey mentions how great volumetric trucks are, and this one might be it. You might see more finishers get into the ready mix business in quotation marks by buying volumetric trucks and using them to supply other people or using them to supply themselves, but they don't have to buy a brick and mortar type infrastructure deal.
Just so you know, you brought that up and I did not.
No. Did I do a good job, Joey? Do you approve
Yeah.
of the PSA?
Yeah, I approve. Nothing else needs to be said. But Wilbanks, when you, or I guess it was Wilbanks that brought it up, talking about contractors vertically integrating. When you first said that, I initially thought you meant that ready-mix companies were acquiring contracting companies, which I do see that every now and then. And you also see ready-mix companies with their own pump trucks and all kinds of other things. So I didn't know if that was what you meant, but you clarified that. But is there, like, what's the difference there? Like, with a ready-mix company supplying their own contractors versus a cement company supplying their own ready-mix company?
Well, I mean, I guess you could see some of that. It would be. I haven't actually seen any ready-mix companies go that way and purchase contractors or start doing some finishing. I know some concrete guys that do some finishing on the side, but as a concrete guy, I say we're not typically visionaries. We don't typically, if we're going to expand, all we can think about is, well, let's get more plants, more trucks. Like, that's expansion? No, well, more plants or more trucks or both. Any other ways? What are you talking about? What do you mean other ways? We're not real creative guys for the most part. You also see the same thing with material guys, rock and sand. And in my past, I've worked for vertically integrated cement. I've worked for vertically integrated rock and sand. On the concrete side, you are not their favorite customer. You get treated like a redheaded stepchild.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Joey. The answer to your question is it depends on the view of management and what they started as. So if they started as an aggregate company and they end up buying ready-mix plants, well, ready-mix plants are the redheaded stepchild. Probably don't want to work there. If you started out as a cement company and they bought ready-mix plants, well, guess what? You're the redheaded stepchild there too. So probably don't. You're gonna get left out to dry. You're gonna get the worst pricing. It's just how it goes, man. It's what did they start as? What is what is their profit center? And in most of the country, outside of like the Rocky Mountain region for whatever reason, the rest of the country, the profits on a ready-mix business are like that of a restaurant. Single digits and sometimes very low single digits.
They're lower, yes. You also see cement has to have higher profit margins because the barriers to entry. Because it wouldn't validate that capital investment otherwise. If you want a cement plant, it's going to take 5 years and $500 million. Rough estimates on the cheap. To get your permitting, to get it built, to get your quarry. I mean, you're talking $250,000 in before you decide if you're buying it, if you're going to build there or not, or maybe $500,000 because you got to do your drills, send those to the geologists, look at the limestone. Is this good enough? Possible permitting, and you want some kind of return on that investment. And if you're making 1.5%, that's going to take you, you have to get your investment back before the quarry is empty, and it's usually a 100-year quarry on a cement. So you gotta get that money back. Whereas ready mix, you're talking, you throw up a plant in somebody's aggregate yard, so that there's basically no permitting. It's already there. You're $400,000, and then you buy some used trucks. You're talking $1.5 million, and you're in business. You don't even need that much money to purchase your aggregates because you're on their yard half the time. So, you're up and running for $1.5 million in concrete. So,
yeah, I was just having this talk with our director of strategic operations. They were trying to figure out how much does it cost to make a yard of concrete, how much are they selling it for, and you tell them those numbers is like the cost of goods versus the sales price, and they're like, whoa, there's that much margin in concrete? It's like, no, you're not taking into account all the fixed and variable costs, and let me start running through a couple of those for you. And then by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, well, they made like $5 on that yard of concrete, maybe they made $10, and they're like,
yeah,
that's not great.
Once you put in your taxes, your overhead, trucking costs, your fuel, your driver, your batch man, all those costs have to go on. Yeah, you're talking, $3 to $8 a yard. I don't know anymore. It's a long time ago when I was in that industry, but as we remember from Folks' class, those margins were not great.
Folks was so great.
I almost changed majors when he told me that. We're in class. I was like, what? I'm gonna go back to finance, dude.
Yeah, his answer, his actual question to us was, all right, because he took out that NRMCA report. And by the way, the report looks very similar today as it did back in 2007 when we were sitting in that class. And, it says, the profit margins, average profit margins, like 2 to 3% or something like that on this concrete business. And he goes, I got $2 million sitting here. I can either buy a concrete plant, a bunch of trucks, and make 2 to 3% on it, or I can go down to the bank, and they're telling me I can get 2%, put it in a CD, and not do anything, just sit at home and play video games. Why would I start a concrete business? And it was and the whole class was just speechless. Like, well, I guess we wouldn't. No, what are we doing here? Like, why are we even here? And he says the lessons don't be average. He said the number one guys that are reporting in this benchmarking survey, they were making 15 to 20%. And he's like, that's where you want to be. That's where you want your profit margins. And that's a nice thing to say, but the only people that are doing that consistently in that benchmarking survey are the Rocky Mountain region. And so one of the things I'd always wondered about that is it possible that maybe that's an area where cement is not, the top dog, it's not vertically integrated. So like in the Southeast where a lot of it is vertically integrated, and we were just talking about how the cement is the profit center. So they're totally putting the screws to a lot of the ready-mix guys, then they're not worried about the ready-mix guy turning a big profit. So when you turn in the benchmarking survey, those profit percentages are going to be listed as lower. I don't know how much of a factor that plays in it.
I'm not real familiar with the Rocky Mountain region. I know Lafarge was a big player out there. I think they sold some of those assets off years back.
100% of them back in the early 2010s.
It was right after they sold their southeastern assets, as they sold that. I worked out there on an on-site project. They got some great granite rock out there.
Man, before we get you out of here, Joey, you got anything for the great and powerful Matthew Wilbanks?
No, not a whole lot. Just go Vols. That's all I got to say.
Go Vols indeed.
Unbelievable. Joshua, you got anything for the great and powerful Wilbanks?
Well, if America cared about college baseball as much as they should care about college baseball, me being an Arkansas fan, Wilbanks and I could go back and forth, but the fact that if we did that, no one would know what we're talking about, I'll save it. But there's a great chance that Arkansas will stand in the way of Tennessee and vice versa for them getting to the College World Series this year, because they're both fine establishments in college baseball this year.
Arkansas has been very good for a while at baseball. Tennessee's just come on. Yeah, hopefully it's some battles, man. Arkansas, dude, even when they're not having a good season in all their sports, they're always hard to beat. Basketball, football, baseball. Even when they have a bad season, they still make you earn that win. So hopefully we get some good games. And best of luck to you.
Yeah, for those people that aren't paying attention to college baseball, the one thing you got to know is that the Tennessee Vols, I hate to admit this, they have literally the most awesome college baseball team maybe that ever existed, because they play with that swagger that reminds me of, it sounds kind of silly to say, but it looks like the 1980s Miami football team. Like the Tennessee Vols baseball team plays with that same kind of swagger. Like, hate me if you want to, but I throw 105 miles per hour, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that, to have that kind of confidence, the freaking coach went out there and ran over an umpire, and then didn't apologize for it. He went out on campus and said, "Yeah, I'll run you over too, and you can pay me for it for charity." I mean, owning your
he chest bumped an umpire, and they suspended him, and then he went out on campus and sold chest bumps for charity.
I mean, that, I love that, and so it hurts my heart that it has to be the Tennessee Vols that come out with that kind of swagger and that kind of dominance. But I mean, hats off, man. I love it. I think y'all's team. I don't see how anybody stops at pitching rotation. I just don't. It's unbelievable.
Well, if Bama paid as much money for baseball players as they did for football players, Ben Joyce would be throwing for the Crimson Tide instead. But you guys are cheaping out on baseball and saving all your pennies for football.
That hurt. The truth hurts.
Yeah.
Wilbanks, man, all jokes aside, dude, we appreciate you coming on here, sharing some knowledge with us. You always have the insights on the cement world. We really appreciate you, man.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, brother. We'll see you.
Thanks, Ben.
And that's going to do it for this installment of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We appreciate you coming along with us and listening in to all the insight that Matt had to share, and we certainly appreciate him for doing so. Be sure to check us out on social media, as always, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and also give us a review and rating on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend about us. We always appreciate seeing our viewership and listenership numbers grow, and we can't thank you guys enough for your support and patronage. And until next time, y'all be good.